I'm Andy Patton, and this is Rhyme and Reason from the Rabbit Room. Each season, we look at the life and work of one poet, starting with Gerard Manley Hopkins. Our final poem of the main season is one of the so-called Terrible Sonnets, called I Wake and Feel the Fell of Dark, Not Day. Here it is. I wake and feel the fell of dark, not day. What hours, oh what black hours we've spent this night. What sights you, heart, saw, ways you went, and more must in yet longer lights delay. With witness I speak this, but where I say hours, I mean years, mean life. And my lament is cries, countless cries, like dead letters sent to dearest him that lives, alas, away. I am gall, I am heartburn, God's most deep decree, bitter would have me taste. My taste was me, bones built in me, flesh filled, blood brimmed the curse, self-yeast of spirit a dull dough sours. I see the lost are like this, and their scourge to be as I am mine, their sweating selves, but worse. In the last episode, we left Hopkins in Dublin, suffering through what would be the last years of his short life. He came to Dublin to work as a teacher in 1884. The residence to which he was posted was in poor condition. It was dingy, cramped, and was cold. In a letter, he called the building, quote, a sort of ruin. And he said that his room was so small that he had more money to buy books than room to put them in. You can imagine him there, overworked and underappreciated, chronically, physically unwell, despairing, but doggedly carrying on his priestly vocation to which he seemed so ill-suited. In these Dublin years, he was plagued by fits of sadness so severe they resembled madness. On top of his cramped conditions, the plumbing leaked, and the water sometimes became fouled, a problem that just 5 years after moving to Dublin would lead to his death of typhoid in 1889. Just like the volta of a sonnet, toward the end of his life, his poetry changed as his circumstances changed. It became sharper and darker, forlorn, yet also at moments uncovering a consolation that was all the brighter for its desperation, for the fact that it was a hard-won hope. Hopkins wrote that his final sonnets came, quote, unbidden and against my will. They were poems that echoed the psalmist who wrote, out of the depths I cry to you. Margaret Ellsberg wrote of these last sonnets that, after reconciling his ascetic nature and his poetic impulses, his writing was, quote, flooded with the moral insight that 20 years of conscientious study of the spiritual exercises had bestowed upon him. Despite the suffering in his life and its extreme crescendo at the end of his life, his last words were, I'm happy, so happy, I loved my life. Now let's look at this poem. It rises out of the pit, as it were, the dark night of the soul. As the first line indicates, I wake and feel the fell of dark, not day. What hours, oh what black hours we've spent this night. The sonnet begins and ends in darkness, and so the suffering seems to stretch on to an unremitting, unrelenting, hopeless infinity. There's no silver lining. In this poem, there are no hard-won lessons, just the wrestling and the struggle and the questions and the dark conclusions that breed in their wake. He addresses his own heart. What sights you, heart, saw? ways you went, and more must in yet longer lights delay. The poet is in flight, in his most inward self, and, quote, with yet longer lights delay, no hope is on the horizon. There's panic and there's desperation. In the Bible, the book of Lamentations tells us that, quote, God's mercies are new every morning. But what about those nights when it feels like morning never comes? That the hours of night will never end, when even though the sun rises, it feels like the night continues. That's where this poem lives. And Hopkins locates the origin of his suffering with God. He writes, God's most deep decree, bitter would have me taste. My taste was me. If he has become gall, become heartburn, it hasn't happened outside the sway of an all-knowing, all-seeing God. The poet's God knows his despair. But he addresses himself to God anyway, with his cries as one sending, quote, dead letters to dearest him that lives, alas, away. And God has left him to the blood-brimming curse, left him with the dark yeast to sour his spirit's dough. And then the poem ends with the dreadful lines, the lost are like this, and their scourge to be, as I am mine, their sweating selves, but worse. One of the questions we can ask about this poem is, why did Hopkins immortalize his darkest moments in poetry? What's happening here? Is this a poem of faith or a poem of doubt? Is it good for us to read this poem and the other terrible sonnets like it? It would be easy to shy away from the dark work Hopkins is doing in his poetry at the end of his life. Easy and perhaps even understandable, because they're difficult. But we shouldn't condemn these poems any more than we should condemn the darkness in, say, the Psalms. Read Psalm 88 and you'll find similar images as the ones Hopkins is using here. The psalmist wallows in a dark night that he likens to drowning in a flood. And the Psalms are loved for many reasons, and one of them is that they're incredibly realistic. They span the breadth of human experience, from the heights to the depths, and they're absolutely honest about all of it. They don't shy away or pull punches. They're unsentimental. And that's why they have endured as the prayer book of the people of God for millennia. As the enduring legacy of the beauty and the wisdom of the Psalms illustrates, there is a paradox to darkness. Sometimes, in telling the darkness and leaving it as dark as it feels, without a compulsion to weave a silver lining through it, to bring it to a happy ending, the telling itself can become a light. If we tell the darkness, we can sometimes find our way out of it, too. And maybe a similar thing is happening in this poem. Yes, in a sense, Hopkins is immortalizing these doubts in poetry, but in writing his doubtful wrestling, he created testaments of faith. After all, the faith that struggles isn't dead any more than a drowning person who still has the strength to yet keep their head above water is dead. What looks like painful thrashing might be dogged survival, might be strength revealing itself when it's put to the test. Faith that expresses honest hardship can be faith tested, and sometimes faith found. So the poet's black hours that seem to last all life long can become a crucible of belief, not just an arena of deconstruction. Wrestling with God is active. Impassive faith, apathetic faith, is dead faith. And that isn't Hopkins. He's crying out. He's reaching for a God he trusts, he loves, he believes in. He's clutching tight to whatever strings of faith he can reach. And when his flailing finds none in the midst of those black hours, he writes that too. The poems Hopkins was writing at the end of his life are so particular, so of a moment, that they actually become universal. People in the grips of pain have come to these terrible sonnets and found the solace that only fellow sufferers can give to one another. It reminds me of a Thornton Wilder quote that goes like this: "Without your wound, where would your power be? It is your very remorse that makes your low voice tremble into the hearts of men. The very angels themselves cannot persuade the wretched and blundering children on earth, as can one human being broken on the wheels of living." Hopkins was broken on the wheels of living. And maybe that is part of what has made his poetry so lasting and has allowed so many other people over the decades to come to these poems and see themselves in them. And now, with all that in mind, here is "I Wake and Feel the Fell of Dark, Not Day," read by Heidi Johnston.
I wake and feel the fell of dark, not day. What hours, oh what black hours we have spent this night. What sights you, heart, saw, ways you went, and more must, in yet longer light's delay. With witness I speak this, but where I say hours, I mean years, mean life. And my lament is cries countless, cries like dead letters sent to dearest him that lives, alas, away. I am gall, I am heartburn. God's most deep decree, bitter, would have me taste. My taste was me. Bones built in me, flesh filled, blood brimmed the curse. Self-yeast of spirit, a dull dough sours. I see the lost are like this, and their scourge to be as I am mine, their sweating selves, but worse.
I'm definitely ready.
I'm here with my special guests who are definitely ready.
Yeah, it's us, the ultimate team. The music from this episode was from
Furtive by Diffie Bosman.
Furtive by Diffie Bosman.
All right, Ivy, this is for you.
Lost Sorry
By Alain Peretz.
by Alain Peretz.
Stop.
What is he doing? What is he doing?
He's just being naughty.
Where Nothing is Forgotten by Kyle Preston.
He almost flew away.
By John Gegelman.
By John Gegelman. And Peter Man by Eva.
The sound design and editing is by Nate Shepard. You can get more poetry from the Rabbit Room by subscribing to our newsletter at rabbitroompoetry.substack.com.